Karens should never be allowed to use Photoshop. This is why. PM discovers Photoshop. Now she can break the laws of physics. I'm an architect working on designing an office space for a company in an existing building. My contact person from the company is project manager, who thinks she's smarter than everyone else. The other day, I sent the floor plan to her with a realistic distribution of spaces, as not everything from the wish list could fit in the space they have. For example, only 2 meeting rooms instead of 3, etc. I asked her to check if they would like to prioritize different areas or move anything around. All standard. She sent back an email today. I've done a bad job as my plan has things missing. But don't worry, she has fixed it for me and I have to do exactly as she says. See plan attached. And here is the results. She's erased all pillars, structural walls and more. I guess the building is supposed to float? She scaled down everything inside like 40% smaller. So now everything fits and she can copy paste more meeting rooms and offices. I mean, I'm sure she'll love to work in an office the size of a bathroom stall. Is she planning to scale the staff too? Add toddler furniture? I don't even know how to answer the email. You know what, guys? I would love to see OP actually go along with this. Order the furniture. Do it. Forget about the pillars and the structure of the building. I want to see this done to completion and I want to see the reaction of this PM when everything obviously goes wrong. Imagine actually trying to do this in real life. It would be amazing. As for the email reply, guys, get in the comments. Let me know. What would you say? My brother-in-law disrespects my wife and my son, gets scared and cries to his parents when I correct him. So, my brother-in-law to this day still lives with my in-laws. He's in his early 30s. From what my wife's told me, and I've seen enough evidence to affirm her statements, they've spoiled him rotten his entire life. He's adopted, of the fair complexion, as opposed to my wife and in-laws' melanin-rich tones. So she suspects some odd fantasizing on their part that I won't really get into, but could definitely see them participating in. He could burn water, he's that inept. He eats nothing but terrible food, is horrendously overweight, doesn't have a job, and actively refuses to get one unless you're doing all the legwork for him. He gets to go out to the Disney and Universal parks all day and throws a tantrum anytime he's asked to do any kind of chores, to name just a few issues I have with him. He's also super creepy towards my kids, and given a history that's not really mine to explain, but you can guess, that's grounds enough for me to not want him within a mile of my family. He still demands their respect because I'm an adult and your uncle, so you have to respect me. But I have to put up with them because I try not to rock the boat as much as possible. My wife's relationship with her parents is rocky enough as it is, a real-life Cinderella story. We got married in mid-2015, and her parents invited themselves to our place on base housing to come see our new home. Of course, they bring the entitled man-child with them. This dude has already been stuffing his face with what little snack foods we've got in the house. Didn't ask to my recollection because we're family, and families share what they have when family visits. Or some such tripe, my mother-in-law said. Not too long after, he starts berating and bullying my ATT 10-year-old son. A grown man bullying a barely double-digit aged child by name-calling. I'm still new to the step-parent / new husband role, and I don't want to overstep, so I let my wife start to handle this. She asks him to stop as it's upsetting our son. He does for a little bit, but goes right back at it a few minutes later. Once again, my wife asks him to knock it off and that this behavior won't be tolerated in our home, and he starts having another of his ungodly tantrums. As soon as, well, mum says, comes out of his mouth, I put my foot down, both literally and figuratively. I do not tolerate any disrespect towards my wife. Strangers, kids, or family be danged. The new house is mostly wood flooring on the first floor, and my voice already carries pretty well. So, the entire house goes silent when I spoke up. Is this her house? Is this yours? No? Then shut the frick up when the people whose house you're in tell you to knock something off. And the entitled man-child just stands there, looking like some flabby fish out of water, with an open-mouthed gasp and wide-eyed terror that someone had dared to correct him. He then ran upstairs and cried to my in-laws about how he was aggressive and scary towards me, and I don't feel welcome in this home. Gee, I wonder why. My father-in-law pulled my wife aside and demanded something be done about my behavior, because that's no way for family to behave towards one another. She told me all this, and to this day, I still don't apologize for anything they deem as rude or unseemly, because that one instance of their 6-foot sack of toast behavior tells me they have no room to criticize anyone on parenting or general behavior. Another reason he may not like me would probably be because I embarrassed the heck out of him for acting like a Nimrod while we were on vacation. For context, we were staying at a hotel her parents had booked with their points, and I was on crutches at the time for a broken foot. This man-child had my, at the time, I want to say around 8-year-old daughter up in the air, spinning her around, standing immediately next to a pool. Obviously, I couldn't ambulate fast enough to intercede physically, so I had to call out from across the courtyard, "Entitled man-child, put her down now," which drew everyone in the vicinity's attention to his idiocy. I finally stick my happy butt over to him, and he is looking all kinds of indignant. He asks how dare I interrupt his time with his niece, and I tell him, because you're putting her life in danger, you colossal moron. You're not even a foot from the side of a pool. What on God's green earth made you think that this was an okay idea? "Well, I'm her uncle," was all he had to counter with. "And I'm her father, and I say, put her down." Now, he and I get into a hard staring match at this point, and he thinks he's going to win because I'm on crutches and he's already naturally taller than me at around 6 foot. I, however, was a hard-charging Lance Corporal at the time and didn't fear a man, beast, or God, let alone this fat sack excuse of humanity. He broke first and stormed off to go tell his parents what happened. They tried to have a conversation with me about how what I did was inappropriate, and I just balk at them and ask them how they could condone the blatant endangerment of their granddaughter by this buffoon. They had nothing else to say. Honestly, at this point, why are you and your wife still in contact with these people? They're just weird. And I get it, it's family, but your brother-in-law is over 30. He acts like a 2-year-old. At some point, surely you just say, "You know what? I get it. It's my brother-in-law, but also he's a weird guy. Let's leave him alone and enjoy our lives without him being a part of it." And honestly, that pool incident, that could have been literally fatal. You definitely should get rid of him. Entitled Woman is furious because I went swimming with my clothes on. I live near the sea. Last week, we had an influx of tourists due to warmer weather, and many of them took to the beach. Today, my friend and I went for a walk along the shore in the afternoon, and we sat down on some rocks to chill. My friend is pretty spontaneous, so at some point, she got the idea to go for a swim. She emptied her pockets and just ran into the sea in what she was wearing. After some convincing, I did the same. We'd been swimming for a while when a woman, about 50-ish, approached us and told us to either strip to our bathing suits or go away because you're setting a bad example. At first, we laughed because we genuinely thought she was joking, but she became aggressive, raised her voice, and continued ranting about how it wasn't normal, that we should be ashamed of ourselves, and such. We swam away, but she continued muttering something to herself, and I assume her family. When we got back ashore, she approached us again and told us we're banned from the beach until we decide to wear normal swimsuits. It's a public beach. No one controls entry by law. What kind of t-shirt and jeans should I wear tomorrow? Hey, you know what? I agree with this woman. It's 2022. Spontaneity is dead. No longer can you do things that are fun anymore. You need to stick to the rules because we live in a dangerous world, guys. And who knows? If you go swimming with your clothes on, you could drown. It's way more likely, statistically proven. So for once, I agree with an entitled parent. A crazy, crazy day. Even crazier than my terrible sarcasm. Let's carry on. Entitled mum steals my iPad and demands I let her kid keep it. I work at a car dealership as a receptionist. One of my duties being greeting customers when they enter. I am a professional artist on the side, and I've been busy with some commissions lately. So since it's not busy at the dealer, I started working on my iPad mini. It's old and I'm working on upgrading, but I currently can't afford to. So I live with it, despite the battery life being really short, and I have to basically keep it plugged in at all times. During my lunch, I was in the waiting area doing more work when a kid, a little girl no older than 4, came up and watched me work. This happens a lot when I draw in public, and usually the kids just ask a lot of questions. But this girl, nice girl, was very quiet and just had a look of amazement. So I just let her be. Her mother, the entitled mum of this story, was nearby at a salesman's desk working on purchasing a new car, which is a long and no doubt boring process. The salesman working with her walked away, which at my dealership they do very often to retrieve paperwork, talk to the sales finance managers, and more. She looks over at me and her kid and asks her, "What are you looking at?" Her kid points at my screen and says she's painting puppies. I was working on Twitch emotes of a streamer's dog. I sort of show my screen to the entitled mum, and she then asks her kid if she wants to draw, which the girl excitedly says yes to. I expected her mum to pull out paper and pencils, or at least ask if I can get some for her too, but she just looked at me, expectantly. When I realized she was waiting for me to hand her my iPad, I said, "Oh, no, she can't use mine, but I can get her a notepad and pens," but apparently that wasn't good enough. She sighs and says, "Just let her draw a little bit. I'm almost done here anyway," which I knew for a fact wasn't true. They were waiting on bank approval for a loan, which can take anywhere from 5 to 30 minutes. And even then, they'll be here longer for finance paperwork, detailing, and more. I start to explain that this is part of my work, and she scoffs, saying I'm just doodling puppies and it was selfish that I wouldn't let her kid doodle on my device too. The poor kid was just looking at her hands, looking quite embarrassed. I then pretended my lunch was over and got up to spend the rest of my lunch at my desk. I couldn't see her behind a huge truck on display, but I could hear her grumble to her child about who knows what. Whatever, I pretend like I couldn't hear, so I don't mess up this sale for my coworker. Sometime later, nature called me, and I got up to use the restroom. I left my iPad on my seat so it would stay plugged in, and I put a notepad over it to try and cover it up a little bit. My desk is a wide crescent shape with no drawers to keep my things safe, so this was the best I could do to somewhat hide it. I was in the restroom no longer than 3 minutes, but when I got back, only my charger remained. My iPad and Apple Pencil were gone. I looked over to the lady, who had her large purse suspiciously in her lap now instead of on the floor beside her chair like it was before. I was panicked because a lot of my work is on that iPad that I needed. I went to my sales manager and told him about the situation. He told me he'd take care of it, but to be patient for now. I went back to my desk full of anxiety and my stomach was doing backflips. My manager went to the desk where the entitled mum was to work out the deal. They're far enough away that I can hear their voices, but not pinpoint exactly what they're saying. But I did hear her eventually yell, "How dare you! I would never steal! Do you want to lose this sale?" I immediately got up and went over behind the lady so the sales manager could see me, but she couldn't. He tells her he understands, but my iPad went missing and he wants to make sure that no one currently in the building has it. That's when I remembered the Find My feature on all Apple products. My iPad was connected to the dealer's Wi-Fi, so I pulled out my iPhone and pressed play sound for my iPad. Her purse started dinging. She tried to play it off as if it's her ringtone, and the sales manager stared at her, as if daring her to answer it. The thing is, with the play sound feature, if I keep pressing it, it will keep pinging. I made my presence known and told her to give my iPad back. That's when she stopped playing dumb and just said, "Just let my daughter have it. Her birthday's coming up and I can't afford a present for her since I'm getting this car." The sales manager said he was happy to cancel the deal so she can instead buy a birthday present for her child and to return my iPad or he'll call the police. She practically threw my iPad at me, where it hit me in the gut and took her kid from the waiting area to leave. The poor thing looked at me with the most apologetic look on her face before leaving with her mother. That sales manager might have helped me, but he's not exactly the nicest person. From now on, I'm not allowed to bring my iPad to the dealer. I have to either leave it in my car or leave it at my home. Whatever. Turns out, the entitled mum took my Apple Pencil with her since she left in a hurry, so I'm gonna stop by the Apple store after work to get a new one. But until then, I'm stuck with my pens and notepad. Okay, I'm sorry, but I'm pretty sure that an Apple Pen is like a lot of money. Is it not like £100 or something? I don't know exactly, but let me know if you know. It's a lot. Enough to follow up on this and make sure you get it back because £100 just gone? No, thank you. And also, surely the dealership still has her info, right? She was going to buy a car. She was going to sign for it. They must have her info. You got to report that because that is theft. If you don't teach her a lesson, then nobody will, and she'll keep stealing iPads. And who knows, maybe in the future, even cars. Stop her now while you can. And also, click on this playlist on screen and down in the description below if you can. If you want to watch all of my Entitled People, Entitled Parents episodes in the same easy playlist. It's so good. Trust me. Whack it on, sit back, relax, listen to it whilst you're chilling. Just have a good time and I'll be there. Yes, I will. You've got a friend.